Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. There's an exploration of faith in the new book written by Janet Watson. The book's titled, Do You Know Me or Just the Name? And Janet is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about this book. Janet, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Janet, I'm curious to learn all about Do You Know Me or Just the Name? So can you tell me what readers are in store for?
Well, they're in store for many things. The reason why I wrote this book, it was an encounter I had with the Lord. Basically, when I was walking in the church, I heard a voice said, many people that goes to church does not know who I am. And I was shocked. And that made me start thinking, what can I do to win souls for Christ? And this is how I came up with this book.
Janet, what sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
Well, anyone who believes in a higher being that created this beautiful world that we live in, as well as those who are confused. We all have circumstances and trials. And sometimes we want a way out. And this book will give you a way out because it tells you the nature of God, why we're here, and what he expects from us, and many other things.
When it comes to publishing, Janet, is this your first time being published, or has this happened before?
No, this is my first time publishing. This is my first book. But I have many others on the way that I'm constantly working on. But this is my first one.
Wow, congratulations. Getting that first one out there is a huge deal.
It is.
How long was this process for you once you got started? Clear up through the editing and everything.
Well, the first thing I did when I thought about writing this book was, of course, I prayed about it. It took about 3 to 4 years to actually start writing the book. But during that time, I was putting down my outline and research. But then I started writing it in 2021, and then it took about another 2 years or so for the editing and the illustration and all that to be done. So it took a while.
After all that time and hard work that you put into it, what was that moment like when you finally got to hold it in your hands, that finished product?
I was amazed when I saw it in the mail. Like, whoa, is this you? I stood still for a minute and looked at it because I never saw myself as a writer. I saw myself, I'm a life group teacher. I've been doing it for over 10 years,
Wow.
But I never saw myself as a writer until now.
And now you're a published author, Janet. When you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
Not only did I write the book, is what's in the book. And my goal overall is to win souls for Christ. If that can be accomplished, that would be more rewarding to me.
Now, we're talking about that publishing process. There's a lot involved there. What was the most challenging part of the publishing process for you?
The editing. The editing was very complicated because each time that I thought this was okay, there's always something that's, always coming back saying, you need to change this, you need to change that. Especially the scriptures I wanted to put into the book, that was a lot of research as well.
What are the chances that we might see another book from you here down the road?
Well, I do have a children's book currently in process. I still have 4 more that I'm working on right now.
Wow.
So there will be more to come.
Well, that's wonderful. So being your first one, I'm sure you learned an awful lot. So do you have any advice now that you'd be able to throw out there for all the authors listening who are just starting out?
Oh, yes. I would tell any author, if you feel that you can write, take your time, persevere, it can be accomplished. One of my favorite verses is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So never give up.
Is writer's block ever an issue for you?
Not really, because my outline helps me. Once I write the outline, I know what I'm going to type. So I never had too much a writer's block.
I think a lot of readers are going to be blessed by this book. Again, it's titled, Do You Know Me or Just the Name? It's written by Janet Watson and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, really wherever you usually pick up your books. Janet, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again for being here with me.
And thank you for inviting me. You have a wonderful day.
The book I'm looking at right now is a heartwarming tale that follows two children who manage to find their way home through the power of faith. It's titled A Light in the Forest, and I'm talking with the author, Daryl Thornton, right now. Daryl, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with me tonight.
So good to be here and talking with you.
So good to be talking with you as well. Daryl, can you tell me all about A Light in the Forest and what readers will find here?
Well, you had a good starting place. For years, my wife and family encouraged me to write and illustrate a children's Christian Christmas book. So A Light in the Forest is a tale of a young boy and girl who were raised by devout, loving Christian parents who emphasize the importance of Jesus and God to be at the center of their lives. So as the story unfolds, the brother and sister, Charlie and Claire, are separated from their parents' mountain cabin on a real cold, wintry night. They hear the hoot of an old, mischievous barn owl. And so like kids do, they start exploring. They go out into the woods, and the owl leaves, and so then they find themselves lost in the woods. So as their parents told them, whenever in danger, get on your knees and pray. So they do. And next thing they know, there's a light. A star is the light in the forest. And it kind of illuminates the snow and the trees. And then here comes the animals. And it starts with a rabbit, then a fox, then a deer. So now they start feeling, hey, we're feeling a little more warmth here, a little more safety. And then the rest of the animals start coming. And there's bear. My son John wanted me to get a moose in there. So one by one, the bighorn sheep, they all come, and then they get on their knees and they pray to God, thanking him for being comforted. And so then here comes the owl. He comes swooping down through the trees, and he leads them back to their cabin and back home. So in the end, the owl is kind of rescuing them. And the very last scene, as the kids look back at the forest, all 12 animals are there waving at them. And the deer is kind of the center. He's winking at him. And then there's the illuminated cross in the background. And the tale is very upbeat. It has rhyming words, and it kind of follows like the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, about that same length, with a very positive, heartwarming ending.
Now, when it comes to the story that you're telling, how'd you come up with that?
You know, it was something was in my mind. And like I said, my family said, you know, you're retired now. And I've always liked to, for the last 6, 7, 8 years, draw and paint on boards, on rustic barnwood type of thing. And I've always liked the mountains, you know, and so that's where we've gone on vacation. So I've done a lot of animals. And so our son John said, Dad, you're good at animals. Why not bring that into your book? And that got me thinking, you know, here's how it came about. As we traveled to Kansas City, usually I would drive, but at this time I said, my wife, Robin, why don't you drive? And all right. So last November, in the trips to Kansas City to see her family, in those 3 trips, it just kept coming out of my mind, the rhyming words. And so after I wrote it, then I went back home and I started sketching and then painting.
While you were writing this, was writer's block ever a thing for you, or did the words just really flow out?
Oh, they just flowed out. I mean, they just kept coming. And, you know, I would wake up at night and all of a sudden I have these thoughts, these ideas. And, you know, I'm an early morning guy, always have been. And first thing on mind was, okay, write these things down. And they just kept coming. So, no, there's no block. I mean, it naturally evolved with God being the focus and everything.
A lot of our listeners right now are authors just starting out. Daryl, do you have any advice that you'd be able to give them?
I always say a prayer, and I give it to God. And I say, okay, God, take the wheel. And he gives me the passion, the drive, the creativity, and the rest will just take place.
I think children are going to love this book. Again, the title is A Light in the Forest. It's written by Daryl Thornton and published by Covenant Books. So head over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. You'll be able to get this. Daryl, it's been really great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, it's my honor and my privilege, and I've really enjoyed it as well. And God bless you, and you take care.
Paula Whitney Best's new book combines fiction with financial education. It's titled The Black Fantasy Markets. And we're going to talk all about this. The author, Paula Whitney, is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Paula Whitney, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor, sir, an honor.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm really interested in the black fantasy markets, Paula Whitney. Can you tell me all about it?
Sure. Easy to do it. Given the extreme economic disparities between people of African descent in this country and white European Americans in the areas of wealth, income, and home ownership, I wrote this book, The Black Fantasy Markets. I worked at an historically black college for nearly 15 years. I was also a summer youth employment supervisor for 4 years. I went to a meeting of such supervisors. For some reason, I can't remember why, but I asked all in attendance, about 35 people, if they could tell the difference in a stock and a bond. 35 people. Out of that, 3 to 4 hands went up. Only 3 to 4 hands. And these are pension-holding black people with doctorates and master's degrees. Thus, I knew I had a career.
Paula Whitney, what sorts of readers do you think would really be into this the most?
My book is geared towards young black children and their families. My book is a bond and stock market primer or a 101 book on the elementary stock market and bond market for anyone. I also talk about interest rates. All these things greatly rule our lives, whether we realize it or not. It's a book for everyone that wants to know about the elementary stock market, regardless of race or age.
I'm really curious how you were inspired to write this, Paula Whitney. Can you tell me how this idea came about?
Yeah, like I said, it really came from being with these black professionals, these pension holders, who did not raise their hands when I asked, can you tell the difference in a stock and a bond?
Now, what does your writing background look like? Have you written before, been published before, or is this your first time at it?
Yes, I have. This is not my first published book. I'm an attorney in admitted practice law in the states of New York and Connecticut. More than 35 years ago, I wrote a law review article entitled Corporations, Receiverships, and Chapter 11 Organizations, published in the Cardozo Law Review, my beloved alma mater. So it's these 2 works that I published.
And once you sat down and got started on the black fantasy markets, how long of a journey was this for you?
I say it took less than 3 years. It was really the book proposal that I did that really provided me with the research that I needed to research these economic disparities between whites and blacks. About 3 years.
And after that 3 years, all the work that you put into it, finally you get your first copy. You get to actually hold the black fantasy markets in your hands for the first time, and your name's on the cover and everything. Oh, what kind of moment is that like for you?
Well, I was elated, to say the very least. We went through about, I'd say, 20 to 30 rewrites.
Oh, wow.
It's a slim volume, but so much work went into it. There were some doubts along the way, but I knew I couldn't give up. I just could not give up. It's too important to my people that this book had to be published.
Now, when you think to yourself, I'm a published author, my work's out there for everybody, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
As I was writing the book, Mr. Graham, my cane and I, we paced the streets of Brooklyn, New York. I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, but I spent a lot of my time in Park Slope. So pretty much any black person I can reach, I ask them, I stop on the street, complete strangers, can you tell me the difference in a stock and a bond? The usual answer is, or they usually give me a wrong answer. So I knew that this book, it's all anecdotal. I don't have empirical evidence, but at this point, I don't think I need empirical evidence. My people need to know about these markets and interest rates. Your mortgage, a credit card, an auto loan, a home. You have to know about these markets and interest rates.
Now, the cover looks great. The illustrations are super important here. Was that a difficult process to get those nailed down?
I was eager to have the illustrations depict street fairs in New York City and all the boroughs are legion. And so I wanted my street fair to be like when people are going for books and shirts and hats and food and everything. But this is a stock market fair. So I wanted my cover to depict people going to a fair to buy stocks and bonds. I think the illustrators did a really good job of doing that.
Yeah, it certainly looks great. Well, this is certainly an important book. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. Again, the title is The Black Fantasy Markets. It's written by Paula Whitney Best. and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So, of course, you can find it everywhere. Head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, even traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Paula, Whitney, it's been really great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Mr. Graham, this has been very wonderful. I thank you for allowing me to participate in this podcast. I wish you a blessed evening, sir. A blessed evening.
There's a new historical fiction book by John S. Dye out there. It's titled, "Oh, Posterity, What Have You Done?" And we're going to be talking all about this book. John is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. John, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. I hope I can explain what the book's all about for everybody, and hopefully they show interest in it and go out and get it.
Absolutely. That was going to be my first question, John. Can you tell me what "Oh, Posterity, What Have You Done" is all about?
Well, it's about a number of things, I guess, but at its core, it's really what would the Founding Fathers think of America today and what posterity did with their divine creation, let's call it. The title stems from the famous John Adams quote, "Oh, posterity, you will never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make a good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it."
Wow.
You know, with the political turmoil and everything going on in our country these days, I thought it was a great topic to write about. You know, what would the Founding Fathers think of what posterity did with their creation? That's the central idea where I got the idea for the book. So it is historical fiction, however. It's not what you would call an academic work, even though it kind of reads that way. I do have a main character who interviews the Founding Fathers throughout, and so it goes in that direction.
So what sorts of readers do you think would really be into this, John?
Well, I think any American who's really concerned about the state of affairs would be interested in reading this. But beyond that, I mean, I know that's really broad. Most people who I talk to who are interested in history, interested in the Founding Fathers, certainly, who are attracted to that era in particular, would be very interested in this. I would say it leans conservative just because these are 18th century people, you know, and from their perspective and what they did during their times, their value systems, there's no doubt it leans conservative. So I would guess that a more conservative base might be attracted to it, but I wouldn't limit it to that at all.
So what does your writing background look like, John? Is this your first book, or have you done this kind of thing before?
No, this is my first book. I was a teacher for 35 years, U.S. history, AP U.S. history, AP American studies. And I've had this kind of idea for a long time because I've heard so often people say things like, oh, the founders would be rolling over in their graves, you know, if they knew what was going on today. And in my teaching, I always kept thinking about the people who wrote the books that I taught in class. And I often thought, well, why can't I do this? You know, what if I had something to say? And so I kind of went with that and just challenged myself to do it.
So being your first one, was this a really long process for you?
I would say no. And this is, I guess it's kind of interesting, and I hope that it doesn't sound self-serving or anything, but I was really surprised when I started writing. The ideas just came to me. And as I wrote, it just kept flowing and kept flowing and kept flowing. Like I didn't do hardly a rewrite of anything in it, except for maybe the beginning of the book. I struggled to find a beginning to it. But other than that, like all the interviews and all the stories I had to go with my 8 founding fathers or people from that era, it just kind of flowed. I kind of explain it as an athlete. When he's playing really well, gets in a zone and really doesn't think about it and just plays. I was surprised that it went that way with me. So all in all, it probably took me, I would say, 6 months writing time to do it. It had some interruptions in there because of COVID and because of a timeline I was on. But once I started writing, it just kept coming to me and kept coming to me. And actually, it was fun to write.
Fantastic. So, John, what are the chances that we might see a follow-up to this or another kind of book from you here down the road?
Well, my wife talks to me a lot about that. She thinks maybe I should have split this book up into like 8 novellas, you know, and made a series of it, you know. Or since this is the Founding Fathers, she thinks maybe I should take something from maybe the Civil War era and do the same kind of theme with it where, you know, I interview people from different periods of history. I don't know if I'll do it or not. I mean, they're all good ideas. I have other ideas in my head, too, that I'm not sharing at this point. But this was fun to write, and I kind of set out to do it just to see if I could do it. And it was fun doing it. So, no, I wouldn't mind doing it again.
Well, this is certainly a relevant book. I think a lot of people are going to really love it. Again, the title is Oh, Posterity, What Have You Done? It's written by John S. Dye. and published by Covenant Books. So, of course, you can find it everywhere like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, also down the street at your local bookshop. Well, John, it's been great talking with you tonight. Thanks again.
Hey, I really, really appreciate it.
I'm really excited to welcome back to the show author Mara Aurora. Mara, welcome back. I love talking with you.
Thank you. So glad to be back.
I'm really excited to have you back on the show. We recently talked about your book, Faucet, For We All Have the Power to Glow, and now the audiobook edition just came out. So, Mara, could you tell us all about Faucet and what readers and audiobook listeners are going to find?
Absolutely. So the book is really about untapped potential. So the story follows a resilient little boy. So it is a children's book. The little boy who falls asleep and goes on an unexpected adventure. So the cool thing about this story is that the antagonist is fear and not a person. So it's about an ordinary boy who does extraordinary things and the power of a child. So the little boy, he has to overcome novel situations, including fear of the unknown. And then as he falls into this deep sleep, he is encountered by a kind and unexpected character who looks unlike anyone he knows. But this character, Faucet, needs to go on an adventure to find his best friend, Abednego. And with the power of this little boy, he will be able to accomplish his mission. But without the little boy, nothing would ever be able to take flight. So the little boy is actually the main character. He gains a friend and a new confidence, and at this point, he cannot wait for others to see him. So in the end, he knows that he can call on his friend if he would ever like to join again. So it creates a sense of power and wonder, and for this little boy to glow, shine, and stand out above others, because that's his destiny, as others can relate to their destiny on their journey, no matter their age.
I love it. And what sorts of readers were you writing this for?
So I would say definitely from birth to 12, but also for really any age, for parents, for just adults in general, for teachers, therapists, educators, just really helping with fear that a lot of people struggle with overcoming that. It could be a first day of school. It could be a job, a new job. It really could be anything that you're encountering for the first time. That can be a bit scary.
A big part of children's books is really important are the illustrations. Mara, how did that come about?
So I actually did do my own illustrations, and I would say that that was really from the heart, because what I did was really both of my kids' rooms, a little comparison, and try to blend those two together. So as I did a lot of the pictures, I really made like a stone house for Abednego's home, and really just tried to make it very comfortable, very inviting, and very welcoming. Even as the flowers on the field when they were walking, the flowers were sort of making this sort of singing and kind of going towards them, to really kind of talk about that power that we have inside of us, that we just have to activate it.
Mara, are you a new author? Is this your first one, or do you have a background of doing this?
So this is definitely my first one. It's not my last one. I do plan to do more for sure. But as far as the audiobook as well for Faucet, it's definitely the first, and I'm very excited about it just because of the British accent that I've chosen, the actress that is doing the voice for it. So it's pretty exciting.
I love it. I was going to ask you about that. Was that difficult to find that voice that was just right?
I thought it might be, but then I also realized that after listening to these amazing actresses speaking, I thought to myself, okay, when the moment comes, just like when the moment came for me to write the book, the right moment, I knew that when I heard the actress's voice, I knew that that would be the one. And that would be the most fitting. I knew it. The moment I heard her, I said, she is it. That is it. She's definitely the one. It felt so alive. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, Faucet, he is coming alive. The characters are coming alive. You can really hear the personality with them. And I just thought it's going to help so many of the little ones that are not reading yet, that can really get to connect, have the opportunity to connect when they're in the car, because I know parents are busy, and having the opportunity to do it, to listen to it in the car rather than reading it type of thing because we're so busy. I think giving that opportunity for families was going to be an asset for everyone.
Again, it's titled Faucet, For We All Have the Power to Glow. This is written by Aurora and is published by the Audiobook Network. So really go on over to wherever you normally get your audiobooks and you'll be able to find this, like Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Mara, it's been fantastic talking with you again and learning about Fawcett, the audiobook edition. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, I'm really happy to welcome author Matthew B. Powell. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I wanted to congratulate you. You have a book out called It's Okay to Be a Christian. Matthew, can you tell me what readers can find here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a quick dive in how children would handle scrutiny at school when it comes to just being a Christian and just the ins and outs, especially in our day and time today. I felt like that type of book needed to be written.
What ages of children did you have in mind?
We're looking at pre-K through 10, 11 years old, somewhere around there.
So is there something in specific that sparked you, gave you the idea to start on this book?
Through my prayer life, I would have to say that I hear the voice of God. I hear him speaking to me and through me, and like we as Christians should. And he guided me through this process, and I'll have to say that it was one worth writing. So yes, that would have to be the reason why I wrote the book.
How long of a journey were you on here once you got started on it?
Well, mainly it was not so much the writing part. The writing didn't take me very long at all. But the publishing process, it is a little bit more of a lengthy process. And I'm guessing mainly because of the illustrated work that I've had. A fully illustrated book takes a lot of time in editing and just the process behind that so that every detail is captured exactly the way it needs to be.
Yeah, it's really important, those illustrations, especially in a children's book. Was that difficult to line up just the way you wanted it?
No, absolutely not. My publisher did an absolute wonderful job at taking the lead and knowing exactly where those pages needed to be, and me giving them cues and exactly how I needed each one of those sections put in the book. That was a key part. It's the constant verbalization between me and them. That's what helped us in putting this book together in a very timely manner and a very professional atmosphere. Absolutely.
Matthew, is this your first time doing this kind of thing, or have you written or been published before this?
No, this is my first book. This is the first time I've ever been published. And quite frankly, I hope to do many more after this. It was an enjoyable process. It was exciting, full of energy, and just love the process behind it and love to see the work, the thoughts, the heart posture come out in a book that everybody can relate to.
And it must have been a crazy moment for you, Matthew, when you actually got to hold It's Okay to Be a Christian for the first time in your hands, that finished product. What was that like?
Oh, it was like a birthday present that you had been asking for all year long, and here we go. It's finally done. It's the excitement, and then the stages after that when seeing it on the different sites and things. That was such an amazing process to be able to hold it in my hands and see the thoughts come to life on page. And it's so much different holding it and being able to look through the pages that we had seen through the publication process actually come to life. That was just such an exciting moment.
And now that you're a published author, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
This particular book, and I would say that all of my books are going to be Christ-centered. So finding a different idea of who I am through Christ, that's something different because we say, okay, we're not going to be evangelists or we're not going to be pastors or we're not going to be this, that, and the other. But this has given me an outlet, and my soul being on fire for Christ, given myself a different outlet to actually share the gospel in everyday life.
Is there anything that you can think that you would do differently next time than you did this first time around?
Honestly, no. I love the process behind it. I love my publishing company. I love the corrections so that I could see them in real time and understand the things that I could do a little differently and a little better. And it just seemed to come together in exactly the way God wanted it to. It was not me. I had nothing to do with this. It was all God. I give him all the glory for all of it.
I think a lot of people are going to be into this book. It's going to bless a lot of children. Again, it's titled, It's Okay to Be a Christian. It's written by Matthew B. Powell and published by Covenant Books. So find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, really anywhere you usually go to get your books. Matthew, it's been fantastic talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure.
The new book by L.M. Morse. It's titled The Return, New Beginnings. It's the story of the world as we know it going away and a group trying to find a way forward. And I get to find out all about this book. The author, Laura, is sitting here with me now. Laura, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm really curious about The Return, New Beginnings, Laura. Can you tell me what readers are going to find here?
Well, it's an urban fantasy, and it's about magic and other things returning to the world. And how would you handle it? And how we handle it.
So would you say it's primarily the urban fantasy fans out there who would like this the most?
Probably. I mean, it's got a lot of snark, and some of the creatures gave one of my neighbors nightmares. So,
So, Laura, how did you get the idea for The Return, New Beginnings? What sparked this for you?
well, I was emailing a friend, and we were talking, and he sent me a snippet, said, stay tuned for part 2. And I'm like, I can do that. And mine just kind of took off.
How long of a journey was that for you once you sat down, got started on this, clear up through when it was published and it was out there for everyone?
Well, the emails were about 6 months, and then trying to get it into a book format took another 3 or 4, because it was just, a scene here or there, and I had to make it, flow better.
And when it comes to writing and being published and all of that, Laura, have you done this kind of thing before?
No, I have not.
Oh, so it's your first one. Congratulations. I can only imagine what's going through your head whenever you finally got your first copy of this in. You finally got to hold The Return, New Beginnings. What was that moment like for you?
Well, some friends came over, and they said there's a box on the porch. So they brought it in, and they're like, well, what's in it? And I said, I don't know. I didn't order anything. I opened the box, and I started squealing. And then my friend came over and immediately took the book I had in my hand out of my hand and said, this one's my copy, right? I'm like, well, sure.
Well, now it's official. You're a published author. So what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you, Laura?
I guess knowing that I did it. I went through with it. I didn't let anything stop me. I just did it.
I love it. So we have the writing of the book, then you hand that manuscript off, you got that publishing process, then, Laura, what was the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Rereading my work over and over again, saying, no, this just doesn't sound right, and having to fix something.
Is there anything you definitely do differently on the next one?
Well, I just was down to maybe 10 pages left on my second edit of book 2. And the email disappeared. It didn't send, and it didn't go to the trash. It just disappeared.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to have to send it in sections, because that was a lot of stuff.
Well, that's great. There's definitely a sequel for this then being planned, being worked on. So do you have more in the works, or are you just kind of doing them as they come?
Oh, no, I'm doing the edit on number 2, and I've already started number 3.
Oh, fantastic. Now, when you're writing, was writer's block ever something that you had to get through?
No, not writer's block. My problem was what I saw in my head. It was hard to put on paper and make sense. Like, I'm seeing this, and it's really hard to describe it. So I'm trying to find a way to describe something or what's going on. It's just not necessarily writer's block, just word block.
And did you find yourself maybe writing at the same time every day, maybe like early morning or late at night? Or did you find yourself writing whenever you had that inspiration or whenever you could just find the time to write?
It was usually I put it down, I had a thought, I had to write it down, and then I had to flesh it out. So just whenever.
And a lot of people listening to us right now, Laura, are authors who are just starting out in this whole thing. So do you have anything you might have picked up along the way that you could throw out there as advice for them? Don't
doubt yourself. If you like it, if you think it's good and other people might enjoy it, just do it. Send it in.
Great advice. So, Laura, who or what do you have in your life that inspires you the most?
Well, just a wild imagination and time.
Oh, wow. This sounds really exciting. I think readers are going to love it. And I think they're going to love the series, too. Again, this one's titled The Return, New Beginnings. It's written by L.M. Morse and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So head over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick this up. Laura, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again for joining me.
Well, thank you.
How to Live According to Grandpa, The Wisdom and Philosophy of Tomateotes. It's the name of the new book by John Reseck Jr., and it's a collection of lessons gleaned from the author's life. We're going to be talking all about it. The author, John, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. John, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm curious to learn all about how to live according to Grandpa. John, can you tell me all about this and what you wrote about here?
Well, a lot of good things. I wrote this particular book, I wrote for the general public. It's the only book I've ever written for the general public. I've written a lot of books. About right now it's 18 books.
Oh, wow.
And I usually write them for my family or for some special group. This is the first one I've written really for the general public that says something for everybody. It's just a bunch of things that as I look around me, because I'm an old man, I'm in my 90th year, and I look around me and I see so many people doing little mistakes. And my book is about little mistakes in making decisions about what you do and how important each decision is. That's about it.
John, how did you get the idea to start this book? Where did the idea come from?
Well, I work a lot with my own background, and I've had a very unusual background in that I've been able to travel a great deal and do a lot of unusual things. And so I pulled most of the stuff just from that. I started writing for the family when my wife passed away. And so I had nothing to do, and so I thought, well, I've written in the past, I'll just write. I can still write. So that's where it came from.
Once you started writing How to Live According to Grandpa, how long of a process was this for you? The writing, then the publishing, and everything?
Well, my first book was published by Prentice Hall back in, I guess, 1960.
Oh, wow.
And my second book was published by Simon & Schuster. It was a textbook in marine biology, and it was, I think, in late 1960 or early 1970s. And then I didn't write much until I took a kayak trip, which set a world record. So I wrote a book about it called We Survived Yesterday. And then I didn't write again for another 8 or 10 years until my wife passed away. I'm kind of crippled up, so I couldn't do a lot of things that I'm used to doing. And so I said, well, I can still write, and I can still take photographs, because I taught photography for a while. And so I write and photograph and illustrate my own books. And this book, Life According to Grandpa, The Wisdom and Philosophy of Tomateotes, is all the things that I think that I have learned during my 90 years. So, I'll never be sure, you know.
Well, you have the writing of the book, then you hand that manuscript to your publisher, and you begin the publishing process. John, what's the most challenging part of the publishing process for you?
I haven't had any trouble, because the first 2 books I wrote, Prentice Hall came to me and asked me to write a book on scuba diving, a textbook for scuba diving. And at that particular time, I was running the largest academy in the United States for teaching scuba diving.
Oh.
And so I wrote that book, and then they came back to me and said they wanted me to write a marine biology book, and Simon & Schuster was going to publish that one. I think Prentice Hall was involved with Simon & Schuster. And so I didn't have any trouble with the publishing. I wrote on a cruise ship. I wrote it in 94 days. I started writing the first day, and I finished the book the last day. It was a 94-day cruise ship. I love writing on cruise ships. I'm going on another one next year.
Wow. Well, I think readers are going to really love this book. Again, it's titled How to Live According to Grandpa, The Wisdom and Philosophy of Tomateotes. It's written by John Reseck Jr. and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So you can get it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. John, thank you again for joining me and telling me all about this. I had a really nice time talking with you tonight.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to an old man. Thank you.
The Road to Now. It's the name of the new book, written by Kesha Powell, and it's a really personal story. We're going to talk all about that right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Kesha is sitting here with me. Kesha, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me. It is a pleasure and an honor.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I'm curious about The Road to Now and finding out what readers are going to expect here. Can you tell me about it?
So The Road to Now, actually, it is a story that takes you inside the mind of a young girl who gets sexually abused by a close relative. And I tell you what that does and how she feels. I pretty much set that day up for you so you see what it was like, what I would combat it with. And when you're young, you never forget things, especially something that traumatic. It stays with you. And especially if nothing ever happens after that, it affects your whole way of life, your quality of life. And it causes you to make choices and do things that you probably wouldn't have done if that traumatic incident would not have happened.
What gave you the idea to write this and publish it?
Well, actually, I have been working on it for 15 years, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
I started it, but it was so painful. I didn't realize that actually completing it would be such of a rite of passage and freedom for me, and it's healing to actually write it. And that's why it took 15 years. Is I would start, and I would cry, and I would stop, and I would start, and I was like, oh, my goodness. I didn't think that it would still affect me, even though it happened when I was a young girl. And as I started to write it, and like I said, I stopped, and then I just totally put it away. I was like, I don't want to deal with this, thinking it will go away, but it doesn't. And interesting, a young lady, I don't know, has this sensory perception, and she was like, you're writing a book. God says you have 30 days to finish it because people need to hear the story. So many people think that they're the only ones that this happens to, and writing it will help free others and it will help free you. So you got 30 days to finish it. Well, that kind of did something for me.
I bet.
Yeah, it kind of charged me up, and I was like, okay, it was like a sense of urgency. Since then, I've had a lot of people tell me how much it has helped them. It showed them strength and courage and how to get through. And actually, I'm working on part 2. I didn't put everything in the first one because I wanted to kind of take my time with the readers. So, first things first, you tell the story. Then part 2, I'm going to talk about the forgiveness part, which is really, really hard, especially when it's someone close to you, when you see that person a lot at family functions and, you still don't feel protected. But it is time to speak out about it because I think it has caused so much of what's going on in society today because it happens more than we think. It happens to more people than we think. I never would have thought most of the people that read the book, they themselves or someone super close to them as like a son or a daughter or a sister had been through the exact same thing. And it was totally mind-blowing. And I understand why there was an urgency for me to finish the book, to tell my story.
So what does your writing background look like, Kesha? Have you done much of this in the past?
Well, actually, this was my first book. However, I remember being in junior high and always having assignments. And, you always have that teacher that you remember who always inspired you, who saw the greatness in you, even when you didn't see it in yourself. And I'll never forget, he's since deceased, but his name was Mr. Merrick. And he would always say, Kesha, you should really, really think about being a journalist. He said, because all of your papers are really, really great. And you have such a style of writing that you take the readers into the story and you keep them captivated by it. And my mom wrote, too. She always wrote, and she had some really amazing poems that she got published. And I think I got it from her because she always wrote and, she always was writing. Every time you see her, she has like a collection of songs and poems that she left for us to forever cherish. She's been deceased about 2 years now.
The title is The Road to Now. It's written by Kesha Powell and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, really wherever you usually go to get your books. Kesha, it's been absolutely wonderful talking with you tonight. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed it.
The Daughters of Vea. That's the name of the new fantasy adventure written by Debora Norton. And we're going to be talking all about this book. The author, Debora, is here with me now. Debora, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's wonderful. Thanks.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, and I can't wait to find out about The Daughters of Vea. Debora, can you tell me about the book?
Okay, well, it is an urban fantasy, so it's, going on now. It's not in the past or on some other planet. And it's about one woman. She is one of 7 sisters. She is nearly immortal, so she's lived a long, long, long time. And her family used to live in the area where I live, which is Harpswell, Maine. But her family is long gone now, and nobody here remembers her at all. And she has been captive on her uncle's planet, and she escaped. And she escaped using a vortex portal that is here on Dingley Island in Harpswell, Maine. It's kind of one of those things that's hidden in plain sight. Like you would walk past it and you wouldn't know it was there until it gets activated. Well, she escaped and she used the portal and she came back here to Maine, but it's nothing like she remembers at all. And she has a really hard time navigating cultural norms and the nuances of our language and the weird stuff that we do, that she has no idea what a school bus is. Not only that is she trying to get by, faking it till she makes it. She's also on a quest to recover some stolen gems. And she learns what a good thing a library is, because she finds out where the gemstone is and goes to take it back using her magic. And she gets in all sorts of trouble. She meets friends and foes alike. And even the friends sometimes, hinder her quest. But she doesn't kill anybody. She restrains herself because she has magical powers. She's a white witch. It's just a rockin' and rollin' adventure.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. Debora, what sorts of readers do you think would love this?
I think young adults and adults. I know when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I was probably reading some books that weren't quite my age. It's got a lot of gripping things that happen, so it might not be good for under the age of 12.
So I love the plot here and everything involved. How did the idea for this all come about?
I get inspiration from the preschoolers that I work with and my own 2 children. Where I live, it's a gem itself. Harpswell is gorgeous. And so I try to weave in my love of where I live and the small businesses that are here. I try to I weave them into the story. Like, she goes to Land's End, which is a real place here in Maine. Also, I used some of the characters from my own genealogy. I know some of my great-great-grandparents. There's some legends in our family tree about them, and I use their names as some of the characters. I don't really have a pinpoint moment of when I came up with this idea. I think it's been mulling around in my head for years.
So what does your writing background look like? Have you done this before?
I have been a copywriter. I've written poetry for myself all my life, even when I was little. I have a liberal arts degree. I didn't take any writing classes or anything like that. Thank goodness for Grammarly.
Absolutely.
But I think Grammarly doesn't like my turn of phrases sometimes and the way my main character mixes things up. And it's always trying to correct that. And I have to laughingly say, no, I mean it this way.
So being your first one here, did this take you a really long time to write and publish and everything?
It took over a year. I had a really good working relationship with the editing staff. So yeah, I did try to work at it every day.
I think this is an urban fantasy adventure that readers are going to love. Again, the title is The Daughters of Vea. It's written by Debora Norton and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So, of course, you can find it at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores.
Bull Moose of Maine, which is completely owned by the workers. They're carrying my book, which I love that.
Oh, congratulations. That's great. Well, Debora, thanks again for joining me here. It's been really great talking with you.
Thank you so much. You're the first interview. I hope I made sense.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.